Wonderful to see everybody tonight. It's a great crowd. I'm Mark Owens, the design director here at the Walker Arts Center, and I am very pleased to welcome you to this, the 40th anniversary of the Insights Design Lecture Series. Very first, I'd like to thank our partners at AIGA Minnesota for their continued collaboration over the past 4 decades. Emily and Kirsten are here tonight, and I encourage you to find them after the talk. Founded in 1986, the Insights series was the brainchild of Mark Odegaard, then president of the Minnesota Graphic Design Association. And since, Insights has become an invaluable resource for professionals, students, and anyone interested in design. All of the Insights design lectures since 2005 are archived on the Walker website, and I encourage you to go check those out. Thanks are also due to Shapco Printing, who printed our wonderful posters for the event, and so I encourage you to grab one before they're all gone. And to the Walker Design Studio and our colleagues in the marketing, Walker Shop, and event production teams who make everything run so smoothly. Thanks also to tonight's ASL interpreters, Abby and Judy, and I invite you back next week for a very exciting talk from Hassan Rahim, which will be next Wednesday, the 25th. So now to tonight's speaker. I think it is arguable that Michael Cina is the original graphic design multi-hyphenate of the internet era. Typographer and retailer, coder and animator, record cover designer and art director, brand architect and abstract artist. His career aligns almost perfectly with the advent of the web. First, as an emergent medium in the space of the browser, and now as the primary way we solicit, share, and increasingly make work. Looking back over his 30 years as a working designer, you quickly realize that very often, Michael was there first. In 1997, he started Test Pilot Collective with Joe Crowell and Matt Desmond, one of the first independent retail font foundries long before the age of glyphs. At the turn of the millennium, his slowcore, experimental flash animations at trueistrue.com were a hallmark of the brief flowering of radical interactive design circa Y2K, a cultural moment which saw Michael invited to speak around the globe. Soon after, he co-founded You Work For Them, one of the very first online retailers dedicated to design, selling fonts and importing hard-to-find books from Europe and Japan, becoming an essential resource for a whole generation of designers. Alongside this, Michael operated the studio We Work For Them with Mike Young, attracting blue-chip clients like ESPN, Hewlett-Packard, Apple, and Microsoft. Around the time he sold his stake in You Work For Them, Michael began a long-running collaboration with the independent record label and creative platform Ghostly International, founded by Sam Valenti. Over the better part of the past 2 decades, he has designed countless record covers, t-shirts, and packaging for Ghostly, even garnering a Grammy nomination in 2021 for the Story of Ghostly box set. Last year, Michael's work for the label was showcased in the book We'll Never Stop Living This Way, a Ghostly International catalog, which we have for sale in the Walker Shop. Since 2010, Michael has run Cina Associates from his studio in St. Paul, creating bespoke typefaces and brand systems for clients like Disney, Adobe, NBC, Polygram, and Sony, while also selling his typefaces through Public Type and continuing to make art. 2024 saw the release of Cina Sans, a highly versatile superfamily that is the culmination of 30 years of type exploration and 1.5 years of painstaking refinement. It's a whole design system of itself. I suspect, like many of you, I have known and admired Michael Cina's work for as long as I have been a designer. And his connection with the Walker goes back nearly as far. Legend has it that as a young typographer, he was caught surreptitiously inserting business cards promoting his fonts into books in the Walker shop. And he was banned from the premises by then design director Andrew Blauvelt. Tonight, we welcome Michael both as a widely celebrated designer and as something of a local legend. With that in mind, and in my official capacity as design director, I would like to present him with this ceremonial lifetime free pass to the Walker as I welcome him to the Insight stage.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. That's humbling. Now that you heard all about my career, we can just go home. That's about it, right? I have about 270 slides I want to go through, and that's not a joke. So thank you all for coming out. Being asked to speak here has been a huge honor. But the biggest honor has been all the countless texts and emails and the support through the years from my community, you guys. And so thank you so much to the Walker and the AIGA for having me as well. At the bottom of each slide, you're going to see some credits, so pay attention to that. Without further ado, let's get into this. In the late 90s, the Walker had one of the best bookstores in the city. My friends, Joe Kroll, Matt Desmond, and I were in there all the time buying books and magazines. The three of us were running a type foundry called Test Pilot Collective. We made test pilots, we made typefaces, worked on design projects, and printed our own promotional materials to get our name out there. We figured if publishers weren't going to put our work in their books, we'd do it ourselves. So we started slipping our promo materials inside the design books and magazines we loved in every bookstore around town, definitely including the Walker. After one of the Walker's Insight lecture series, an overseas speaker asked us out to dinner. We told the story of inserting our work into the books, thinking we were pretty clever. Someone from the Walker didn't find it clever at all. A few days later, we got a cease and desist letter saying if we didn't stop, they'd report us to the police. We had no budget, no connections, and no permission. We made things that nobody asked us to make, and we found ways of getting that work in front of people. That energy of making work because you have to is where the story begins tonight. I've been a designer and art director for 30 years. I built 5 type foundries, started 2 agencies, and done branding for Fortune 500 companies, and created well over 300 album covers. I've worked through economic crashes, technology shifts, and personal upheavals. The thing that carried me through all of it wasn't ambition or talent. It was attention. Growth is shaped by attention. Your values and curiosity shape what you pay attention to. And what you pay attention to repeatedly over time shapes your way of seeing and ultimately your life. This is how it's played out in my process. First, you have to get out of your own way. Real attention means arriving without a verdict already formed. Curiosity is not a verdict, it's the opposite. It's choosing not to know yet and the desire to discover more. Perception is what you can see right now. Your whole history gets in the way, but it's also why you can see anything at all. Interpretation is how you connect the new to what you already know, a bridge that can illuminate or distort depending upon what you bring to it. Taste is a sensibility you've built through years of looking, what you can't unsee once you've seen it. Judgment is the feeling of knowing what works and what doesn't. It's taste applied to decision. You can't always explain it, but you can train it. I call it my gut. Work is what you make. It's the part that everyone sees, but it's not the part that matters the most. I believe the process is the most important part. Feedback is what the world sends back. Not always what you expected, not always what you wanted. Mistakes are the feedback that teach you the most, the ones I've learned to welcome. And we return to attention. You're not the same person who started. You notice differently now, and that changes everything moving forward. Growth compounds through repetition, through trying new things and reacting. The work grows because you're seeing differently and more clearly. The best attention isn't concentration. It's being open to what's in front of you. Tonight, I want to show you my career through this lens. Most of my work didn't happen in calm and stable conditions and forced me to adapt. There were 4 major turning points in my career. It all started in college. I originally went to college for advertising because I didn't know graphic design existed. The day I found out about it, I switched my major. I ended up double majoring in visual communication and fine art from the University of North Texas. My second year in the design program, the head of the department told me that my work was not so great and that design was not for me. My professors advised me to leave the program and find another profession completely. My grandfather, Stanley Cina, son of Italian immigrants who worked the iron mines up north, had a name for me, testa dura, which means hard-headed in Italian. Being told that I couldn't design made me want to do it even more. I never had a plan B. I love visual design and art so much, I knew it was my only route. So I stayed, but I dropped out my 5th year of college, a couple credits short to DJ full-time. College helped shape my attention, and it gave me a trained way of seeing, the understanding that repetition and volume builds judgment, language for what I was doing and why it worked, context, history, and references that gave the work a lineage, and permission, the sense that this could be a real life. I moved to Minneapolis in 1996, fully committed to building my own path. I learned HTML and built my first website, Cina House. It featured typefaces, designs, exploration, and music reviews. I spent most of my time designing whatever I could get my hands on. I started looking for a job and interviewed at nearly 100 places around Minneapolis. Eventually, I landed at a nonprofit. I learned print production, project management, and something valuable to my career: to work fast on boring jobs so I could get to spend time on the exciting work. That's when Joe, Matt, and I started Test Pilot Collective. We'd sneak into local agencies on the weekends, sometimes weeknights, rocking on their dime, using their computers with portable zip drives. We designed a new homepage for their website every day, and of course, we were still guerrilla distributing our work around town. Test Pilot Collective was not client work. Nobody hired us to do any of it. But that personal work, the typefaces, the websites, the posters we slipped into books, those were signals. I define signals as a public broadcast of values, ideas, and style. And signals travel. You just don't always control where they land. I can't stress this enough. Personal work is what moved me forward. It's how I grew. It's how I signaled what I cared about. It opened doors to opportunities that align with my values and interests. This is how my practice has worked. Client work funds time and space. Time and space makes personal work possible. Personal work generates ideas, signals, and community. Those attract aligned collaborators, which leads to better client work. The loop keeps going. Each cycle builds on the last. Attention develops under certain conditions, though. Time that isn't constantly fragmented, enough to hold a thought, follow it, and see where it goes. Space, physically, mentally, creatively, and socially. People who tell you the truth, push you, and show up. Balancing all this is not easy. It took real trade-offs, socially, financially, and emotionally. And those trade-offs shaped my work. Every yes is a no to something else. I bought a townhouse outside the city, in Eagan actually, for about $400 a month. My friends were paying 4 times that in small apartments in Uptown. That margin is what gave me room to experiment, start a company, import books from overseas, and spend long nights on projects that excited me. By the end of 1999, the news made it sound like the world might shut down. The apocalyptic energy was everywhere. I quit my job and moved on from Test Pilot Collective. I started freelancing, and companies like MTV and NBA reached out with projects. I also started a website called True is True, my online sketchbook. It was a place to experiment, play with new technologies, and publish work for fun. That personal work led to helping out the New York Stock Exchange figure out how to visualize their stock tickers, and my work ended up in a few major gallery collections around the world. You never know where signals land. The dot-com bubble was building. The web was as hot as AI is now. Venture capital was pouring into any company with a pitch deck and a website, whether or not they'd even make money. I turned down job offers, and I went to some of the startup parties and visited their offices. The math didn't add up, and I knew it wouldn't last. When the bubble popped, companies were failing daily, literally. Right in the middle of that free fall, I started a design agency called We Work For Them with a friend I met online. Everyone thought we were crazy. The industry was at an all-time low, but hard times create openings if you can protect space to explore. While everyone was reacting, we kept building a practice around the work we actually wanted to make. My bank account was empty. It was a real gamble, but I trusted my gut and kept going. The work traveled, referrals stacked up because we were available, and we landed bigger clients. I wish I had more of my work to show from this early career, and that brings up one point I wish I had learned earlier. It's to document everything. Your process is part of the work. This is our work projected on top of the Hague City Hall in Holland. I had typefaces that weren't for sale online, so we saved 10% of We Work For Them's earnings to fund a new venture, You Work For Them. It started as a platform to sell fonts and design books I was importing from overseas. It quickly evolved into a marketplace where designers could sell personal projects, typefaces, and their digital art. It became a place for me to educate designers and help them with mentorships. Eventually, You Work For Them became our main job, and we stopped doing client work. This is an example of a type showing. In 2010, I made the biggest jump of my career. I sold You Work For Them. The Great Recession was in full swing. My life was shifting fast. I'd just gotten married, bought my first house, and had a kid on the way. All that work had moved away from creating. I wasn't designing much at all anymore. I was managing a thriving company, but I wasn't thriving. There was misalignment with my business partner. What I'd built was no longer what I needed to be inside of. In the middle of all that, the uncertainty, the fear of starting over, a friend said something that I carry with me to this day. Nobody can take away your talent or the way you see. We get caught up in protecting what we've built instead of imagining what can be built next. The ability to move forward, the ability to dream further, the faith that what's in you, that was put there for a reason. That's yours, and nobody can take it. As my time at You Work For Them was coming to a close, I started drawing and painting again to help process what I was going through. Painting was a place where nothing was expected of me, where the work didn't have to solve problems, sell anything, or perform. Part of my practice is remixing existing books, painting, layering, and rebuilding them. Part play, part practice, part exercise and seeing differently. Staying open to what I don't understand is where I find inspiration, beyond restrictions and logic. I work between order and abstraction, emotion and concept to find new ideas and unplanned outcomes. All that work led to Ghostly International. I met Sam Valenti through a designer who was working with Ghostly at the time. We stayed connected through the early 2000s until they reached out about designing a cover for Dabri. They wanted something more organic, and they liked my paintings that I was doing. After Sam saw how I worked, he asked if I wanted to do 3 more covers. I showed up fully, and I cared. Ghostly became something different from anything else in my career. I love branding work, but Ghostly gave me a place where art and aesthetics could lead. I could bring painting, photography, typography, whatever I was working on, directly into the work. It could be dynamic. It could speak with different languages. I did more than album covers, apparel, ads, merch, etc. Sometimes I even found bands to sign. Music has always been a passion for me, something I believe in. Ghostly has a tight crew and a scene that I'm lucky to be a part of. It's still going today and has been the most important creative relationship of my career. It all started because I was painting through the hardest time of my life. Over time, I realized there were many dynamics involved. From the outside, the work might look fully self-initiated, but it balances many voices, personalities, concepts, and preferences all under one creative roof. The diagram shows how those voices entered the design process at any given time. Goucher Lustworks' 100% Goucher was a landmark mixtape that put him on the map. 10 years later, I got to design the vinyl release. I wanted to feel physical, handmade, grid-based, and something real that you could hold. My main focus was to tell a story, a time capsule of sorts. He didn't want the lyrics printed outright, so I placed them into the inside of the sleeve. You had to tear open the jacket to read them, which totally destroys the packaging. Almost like opening a time capsule. Everything started on the computer, then got printed up and pasted by hand. Any changes after that were done manually, so the imperfections would add character to the final piece. I got an email from Matthew Deere about designing his next cover. We never met, but we jumped on a call and the concept came together in about 15 minutes. I wanted to do a portrait and he said he didn't want his face on it at all. Eventually he agreed as long as he could be filmed with performers performing around him while I painted him live. He flew me to New York right before Christmas and I painted a 6-foot portrait of him in an abandoned floor of an ad agency in New York. This is from an exhibit for Ghostly at the Art Directors Club in New York City called We Will Never Stop Living This Way. The bunny cover for Matthew Deere was built around illusion. After exploring hundreds of different ideas, I wanted the work to exist between digital and physical. Something that felt like porcelain or a pill, smooth and untouchable, yet strangely intimate. The monochromatic type-only design heightens that ambiguity. Dreamlike, synthetic, and human, like a memory you can't quite place. I was handed a compilation called Context. I listened to it and started thinking about things that provide context. I had a set of my childhood encyclopedias in the office, so I grabbed one off the shelf and documented the process. I like the idea that recorded knowledge could be destroyed and preserved at the same time. Burning is one of the most destructive things that you can do to an object, while freezing is one of the most preserving. Doing both felt like a contradiction that held together. The information is still there, but no longer accessible in its original form. When something ends, it doesn't disappear, it just changes state. My set was literally a poster back on the ground outside. This was my office at that time. It was off of Stinson Boulevard. I worked with Shigeto for years, and this cover is one of those projects that I can't fully explain. It just came together. Sometimes the work just arrives and you get out of the way. "3-3" was the final record in Daubrey's 3 LP series. It was a milestone release. I made an unboxing video, a quiet and precious way to document something that literally meant so much to me. Daubrey's Super Cassette was inspired by the public type showing for my font Yamantaka. Again, showing how personal work can segue into client work. For this cover, Sam came to me with a photo that he liked, and I zoomed out from the person on the planet, out to the galaxies, back to the smallest particle, closing the loop between the infinite and intimate. I like to really do a lot of work. I feel like it's really important for me to find the final solution. This particular project probably had 300 to 400 pieces that I did. Some of them were just because I knew I was going to be doing a series and I didn't know where they would lead, things like this. But also just sometimes you just get into this zone and just keep on making work and see what happens. That's just a partial part of the work. Cover for Dua. The Story of Ghostly International is a 6-album vinyl box set celebrating the label's 20th anniversary and 350th release. It was nominated for a Best Box or Limited Edition Special Package Design for the 2021 Grammys during COVID. Alongside Paul McCartney, The Grateful Dead, Depeche Mode, and Wilco, I was nominated for the Grammy with art direction with Molly Smith. A Century of Art and Artifice is a book that features 100 of my album covers for Ghostly International, published for Visco. When the book came out, I actually brought a copy here to the Walker bookstore and just left it as an offering to the gods. Ghostly Gothic is a custom typeface I designed for Ghostly International in 2020. It was inspired by our early sans serifs and timeless fashion. Starting Cina Associates was a reset to hands-on creative work. I focused on branding for agencies, TV networks, Fortune 500 companies, etc. This is just a small handful of ones I did. I became known for finding solutions pretty fast, and agencies would hire me when they needed strong ideas quickly, when a project was stuck or they needed a new direction. What made that possible was the practice I built in college. I could move quickly because I'd spent years of training my attention. I could generate a lot of ideas because I developed taste through repetition, which I developed in college. Tonight I'm focusing on the personal adjacent work because that's the thread through this story, but the practice is the same. The attention, craft, and values show up in everything. Doing business is a relational practice. Your values show up in how you work. You're designing the relationship, not just executing within it. It's sustainable when you're being yourself and exhausting when you're faking it. I've been more selective about the work I take on. The best client work I've done has always had the same things: trust, honesty, and the room to explore. And I want more of that. I want to bring my artistic practice into everything, not just the projects that expect it. This is a design that I did for a bracelet. It's an architectural letter C, constructed from stacked bricks cast in gold. This is for the McLuhan Institute. I also have so many things I still want to do, like write a book or design a whole town. My goal is to use every tool that I have built to build systems, something people can actually use and live in. Public Type is my 5th type foundry. I started it 6 years ago to release typefaces on my own terms. It began as a retail catalog, but it's becoming something bigger, where type isn't just a tool, it's the foundation of a brand. A custom typeface can carry a company's identity in ways that a logo can't. That's where Public Type is heading. We design typefaces that become the core of how the brand looks, feels, and speaks. Right now, I'm building it from the ground up with help from Danny Litt. New site, new systems, tighter focus. Public type follows that pattern. For 6 years, I ran public type between client projects. Now it's become my primary focus. Typography carries feeling before meaning. People feel the type before they read the words. When it's done right, it merges with brand expression while quietly holding everything together. We're building public type on trust, clarity, and sincere relationships. Public type runs the same way that Cina Associates does, with a global pool of collaborators. Typography lives where creative, financial, legal, technical, and strategic worlds collide. Our job is building the system that holds the whole brand together and making sure everyone knows how to use it. It's where everything I've built over 30 years gets concentrated into something that can outlast me. It's the most excited I've been about it, about anything, for many years. And if it resonates with you, come find me. Since 2021, I created a new cover for Herb Sundays almost every week. Herb Sundays is a playlist series where Sam Valenti selects someone from the arts. They provide a playlist, and Sam writes a feature about them, and I make the visual cover. Most of it I create by hand, specifically for each feature. It's an exercise in thinking with my hands, making decisions quickly, and exploring new work. Every week I give Sam 6 to 10 options. We joke that it's his job to pick the worst one. We collaborate in a space where we both can grow, take risks. When I started, I built a rigid typographic system around all the covers, trying to contain it. After the first year, I realized it couldn't be contained, so I let it go. Basically ignoring all the rules and started to explore. There were stages of letting go, each one teaching me something new. I give myself around an hour to design each feature. Herb is a weekly exercise in responding, finding new paths and walking down them, not perfecting. Nothing waits for perfect conditions. Over 180 features, the work has developed more depth and breadth than I could have seen from the start. I wanted to mention a couple other things I'm building because they're part of the same practice. Zone is something I started with Kaya Bowman and Danny Litton. We bring people together in a different space with a new name each time. No agenda, no content, just presence and real conversation. We set the conditions and get out of the way. It's how I practice paying attention to my community. The next one is tomorrow night. We have 50 more spots left. We'd love to see you there. If you want to scan this right now, I'll put it up later too, but if you want to go, just scan it in and we'll get you on the list. But we got probably about a room for 50 more people. I started Tell with Matthew Swenson alongside Joe Horton and Elena Stanton, who create the media. We think of it as a social sculpture, part editorial platform, part happenings, part archive, part client studio. Tell is a platform for connecting our community through storytelling, education, and culture. It's meant to be engaged with, not just consumed. I also write on Substack. It helps me think through my ideas and make connections. Writing forces me to clarify and expand my thoughts by finding my values. I've been at this for 30 years and I still struggle to protect my attention. The world is designed to fragment it. It's getting harder for me, and that's the main reason I'm giving this talk tonight. We're in the early days of a design renaissance. Tools are no longer the constraint. It's about what you can dream up. AI is changing what is possible at a rapidly accelerating pace, and that shift makes some people feel unsettled and unfocused. I feel that too. But this isn't new. The early web, the dot-com crash, the Great Recession, every one of those moments created openings for people who were paying attention. The world wants your attention. Be deliberate about where you give it. Protect time for work that nobody asked for. Stay close to people who push you. 30 years ago, a professor told me to quit design. 16 years ago, a friend told me nobody can take away my talent. I needed both of those moments. One made me stubborn enough to stay, and the other restored my faith that talent is mine. We all have more talent and potential than we allow ourselves to believe. The ability to imagine bolder visions, to dream new ideas, and for us to create futures that don't even exist yet. Your attention is your agency. What you choose to notice, what you choose to protect, and what you choose to come back to again and again. That's how we solve complex problems and how we create meaningful things that last. The practice is the point. Showing up, noticing what pulls you, what drains you. Finding what actually matters and moving forward. So I'll ask you, What are you noticing? What are you choosing to see right now? Follow your attention, follow your curiosity, follow those trails, because that's where it starts. That's where everything I've shown you tonight began for me. I want to thank all the collaborators that I've worked through the years. This is not all of them. I know I missed some people, so sorry. I also want to thank you all, like our Minneapolis community. This city has been through something that I never thought we'd ever imagine in our lifetime. And watched you all show up again and again to protect what matters most, each other. And I want to thank my family for their love and support. None of this would be possible without them. Here's the code again. Email me if you want to talk about anything or need more information, but thank you all for coming.
Thanks again, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Mike, for the wonderful talk. I'm going to just ask a couple of questions to kind of warm up the room, and then I want to get ample time for the audience to ask questions. I'm struck. I mean, I didn't prepare anything, as you know. We're going to let it organically unfold, but I'm struck sort of through the talk, which we didn't review it ahead of time. You know, by this sense of abundance in the work, this restless abundance that cuts through every chapter. And there's something, I mean, you mentioned this sort of ambient anxiety around creativity, and there's something so reassuring in this inexhaustible abundance that you see in your work. And I think that I find that very hopeful. And it was just something that struck me. And maybe with that in mind, I want you to talk maybe a little bit about reinvention as like a motif in your, or as a recurring motif over your career. It's another kind of reassuring arc that I see in the work. Technology is always changing underneath our design practices, and just your reflections on that process of reinvention.
Yeah. I've noticed about every 9 years that there's like big shifts. I used to think it was 10, but it's really more like 9. And I think part of it is, one of the things that I do is every year and 6 months, I take note of like what's exciting me and what's really interesting to me. I think something that's really important is just being curious about things and just looking at things. And I think once you're curious about things, you want to learn about new technologies and things that are happening now. I think it's also having your antenna out and just paying attention to how things are moving. Some of them are more obvious. Like for me personally, I had about a 10-year stretch of just like branding jobs on top of branding jobs. I mean, I was working on 4 to 6 a month easy. Now, not many, you know? And so when you see those things, you kind of have to really be able to be not afraid of just pivoting and moving, and not trying to find more branding work. I'm just like, well, I'm just going to work on typefaces because that's what's interesting me, and that's what actually people are inquiring about right now. And so it's really just, for me, it's been doing a lot of different things and then pivoting and just knowing, just kind of like, again, putting your finger up in the air and seeing which way the wind is blowing.
The other thing that sort of struck me about the work, and was something that I think it struck me because it's so very different from my own way of working, which is something just about process and the labor of design that's so clear in the work. And we were joking that, you know, throughout his career, Michael always had like 2 things going on, right? A type foundry and an agency, or like experimental website and, you know, a retail operation, you know. And so And then, of course, the work is cut through not only with process in terms of working with your hands, but I don't know, people in the audience, type design in the first years was very time consuming,
insane,
laborious. Those of you who are old enough to have mastered action scripting and Flash know that was incredibly laborious and time consuming. And we're in a moment now where optimization, ease is sort of the watchwords of how we're supposed to, we're all going to have an assistant that makes everything easy for us. And I think there's just something about putting in the work and the value of putting in the work, whether that's with your hands or with learning a new skill that cuts through the work. And I wanted you to maybe talk about the value of doing things that are very hard.
It's funny because with all the new technologies, they always offer you a simplistic life or an easier life. But what I found out is actually it just gets harder and harder with all the AIs now. I mean, just to do video AI, you probably have to know 50 different things just to get something that can work properly. So especially in the early days, it's a lot more laborious. So for me and my spare time, I mess around with this stuff, just having fun with it. And it's not a pressure, but it right now, and like what you're saying is completely true. It's so much work. It's 20 times the amount of work that anybody would ever want to put in. And it kind of turns me off almost to like we're action scripting, learning HTML, designing fonts at the early stages. Those were fun, laborious. This is like really hard, laborious stuff. And so I think you almost have to start specializing in some of these things. But it's also hard because if you got a regular job, you have to invest so much time. I personally love the process of making things. So for me, process is like the most important part. I love the beginning of a project. I love handing off a project, being done with something. But really, the meat is the middle part and the exploration. And so actually, that's one of the things that I'm trying to do better is document my work as I'm doing it. So at the end, just finding better methods of, okay, so like when I present work, working in Figma now and building these client decks, but when I'm building the decks to show, I'm also building them with the thought that this is going to be what it looks like when I show it to the world too. So I'm kind of doing two things at once, constantly trying to find ways to optimize. So that is something I've been doing a lot of, but yeah, documenting through the process is also super important. So then at the end, you don't have to go back and do it all. Because when you're done with a project, you're done, you don't want to see it again.
I mean, there is absolutely a forward momentum.
Yeah. Because you got,
And you had this very resonant moment where you talk about, there's a process and then the record cover sort of freezes, or it's a moment that freezes or arrests, a kind of dynamic process. And I think that's really compelling and interesting. Those are the main things that I wanted to sort of do some table setting. And so I'd like to open. I know this is a very you have a lot of friends in the audience, and I know this is a warm house, as they say. So I'd love to just open it up and have the audience ask questions while we have you here. And we should have some microphones going around. There we go.
Hi, hello. So you like the middle part of it, of the project, the meat, so you speak. I hate the meat. So how can I make that middle section more tolerable? Yeah.
Oh wow. That's most of the work. That's where all the work is, right?
I know, but in a place where I'm bombarded with things to make it easy, to make it simple. Like how can I just grit through my teeth?
Well, it depends upon what kind of work you're looking for, but I mean, that's really the fun part, I mean, and I think it's learning how to deal with certain things too. I mean, in all honesty, a lot of things that I do, I find when I recap a project, I go, I didn't handle that the best. I did that. So like working on communication and things like that, helped me out a lot. I think communication with a client is really important. Being able to explain yourself and explain what you're doing, why, making things interesting. And I try not to sell. So I think for me, it's so I don't know. That's a tough question. If you don't like the middle part, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to say on that one. Good luck. Try and find like what interests you, and then just keep building off of that. That's probably the best answer. Yeah, yeah.
I have kind of a selfish question, and that sometimes when you see names, they like stick out to you because you're like, oh, is that who I think it is? And I saw one of my former professors, I think, on your little list, and I was just curious to know a little bit more about that. His name is Carl?
Oh yeah, Carl Engelbretson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably here tonight.
Hi, Carl. Sorry.
I met Carl actually through a mutual friend that was doing his child daycare, and she found out that he was a designer, so we met through that, and he's very interested in type. So he helped me with public type, getting that going, and just helping with a lot of projects through the years. So he put in some work on some of the stuff that you saw. Yeah, Carl's great. He's been a good friend. Yeah. Hi, Carl.
There he is. He's right there.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah, there's a few up there. We have some people down here.
You had some really impressive clients. So with the past work you did and the experience you have now, what would be maybe also money aside, like a dream project for you to do right now?
Design the town.
I mean, like seriously, like designing a town seems like a lot of fun to me. I mean, if there's a lot of litigious and a lot of red tape, then maybe not. But I think writing has been interesting to me. Education is kind of where things have been kind of pointing. I've been getting asked to speak a lot and teach a lot. I'm doing a class at Penland this summer. And I also am going to be doing an online class for like 4 different hour sessions. So yeah, I think teaching is something that I've been very interested in ever since my early career. And so I see teaching as being part of my next stage. But as far as like fun projects, I mean, I'd like to work with all my heroes, different musicians, directors, a lot of directors, movie directors I think would be fun. I ended up working with Michael Mann on a project with a couple guys recently, and that was pretty fun. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I wish I had a better answer and more specific, but yeah. Fashion, yeah.
Sorry, I also have a question here. Firstly, thank you very much for coming. It was actually really, really interesting. Now, you've obviously had a really interesting career going through a lot of very interesting clients. And starting out in the industry, what is your approach when you're doing work with a client and the client or the work isn't particularly interesting, and you're kind of struggling through it? What is your approach to dealing with, trying to getting over that, design hurdle or design block that you might be dealing with, and you might not have the ability to change clients?
Yeah, you find what's interesting in it. Like, I don't think I've ever worked with a client that I really was just completely bored with what they did. I think if they're not interested in what they're doing, then it's harder for sure. And I've seen that where some clients just want you to try and do everything, solve all their problems, and you can't do that. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I think it's just finding what is interesting and then keep on pulling on those threads, because that's where the interesting solutions come from.
First of all, I gotta say you're really talented, and I love your sense of design.
Thank you.
But I want to talk about the album covers. You had a lot of variety there, and I want to know what your process is. Do you listen to the music? I mean, many times, backwards, forwards. How do you translate what that artist has with their music into a cover that communicates? Because that has to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, early in the career, it was listening to the music, and I still do that now. But as time has passed, people are more literate, meaning are visually literate, I should say. And so sometimes they come with an illustration, or they have an idea or a concept. So sometimes it's like trying to pull something out of their hand, saying, no, I don't think you want that. And that's sometimes hard. That's the harder thing. And I mean, I've had musicians where it's been a struggle for sure, but I think it's just learning how to communicate with them, finding out what they're interested in, maybe like their inspirations, and then finding that common bond and then moving forward. So sometimes they give you full trust, and that's amazing when somebody can give you like carte blanche and just let you run. That's like a gift. But also I like to know kind of like what makes them tick and what's interesting to them. Trying to get a bigger picture to help form that. I think that helps. I don't try and just like make it all about me as well. As like I like to find out what they're interested in. So yeah, it's a bunch of different things. It's listening to the music. I had that one diagram on. So like sometimes it's been like the manager wants them to look like a certain way and they don't care about anything else. So sometimes it's like a real hard directive, like they need to be like this or be received like this. So it's all over the map. But yeah, it's fun when you're allowed freedom to run.
Yeah, right there.
Also related to the album covers. So at one point you were talking about going through like 300-400 different variations of that are concept spinning after concept after concept. Whereas with your corporate clients, clearly there's a lot more discernment. Like you had your couple sketchbooks up and it's like, I'm coming to a solution way faster. How do you reconcile the difference between those two? Like, does it depend on what the task at hand is and who the client is, whether it's branding work or album covers, or is there like, it just seems like such a different process between the two of them, even though it's all coming from the same brain, you know what I mean?
I think I kind of know what you're talking about. They are different processes, but they're kind of the same. It's just exploring and finding out solutions. So one is, through branding, is a lot of sketching. It's a lot of asking questions. It's a lot of figuring things out, where the art is kind of like thinking with your hands is what I'm calling it, just playing and experimenting. Usually when I'm doing a lot of different ideas, they're small progressions. I'm not like always coming up with like 400 totally different ideas. They may be 400 different works, and that's rare. That's rarer. More common would be 50 with the album covers, but it just depends upon the project. And I think with the client work, it's set up to be a different process. When you're working with somebody who's a musician, there's a different expectation than a client would have, like a proper client would have. So yeah, it's just a different ball game, but it's kind of the same. It's very similar, especially with just communication. That's something that I've we're just going to keep on drilling down, is learning how to communicate really well and expressing what you're doing here, explaining why, how. When I was a younger designer, I thought that everybody could see and understand what I was doing. And as I've gotten older, I found out that they just don't. And so holding hands, learning how to hold a hand and really explaining things with people goes a long way, super long way.
Right on. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your work and ideas tonight. Really appreciate that. One of the ideas you shared early on, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not sure if I have it right, is growth compounds through repetition. And you repeated that several times. Can you talk more about that and what kind of growth you're talking about? Personal growth, work growth, brand growth, anything?
Well, I think all of the above. In college, okay, so this is a great question. This will answer a couple other questions too. In college, my professor, how we did logos is one round of 100, another round of 100 ideas. And these are different concepts. These are not, so how I was trained is sketchbook and pencil, not pen. Sketchbook, because that's a good place to contain things. A pencil is because it's impermanent, so just psychologically. So it's not to overthink. It's trying to turn off your brain and let your ideas go, and writing out all of the bad ideas. So with 100 ideas, there were 100 sketches, right? Second round, 100 sketches. Identify 50 after that, and identify 20 after that. Identify 5, and then go for the final. And so that's how I was trained as a designer. And so that's what really helped me. And that's how my process has gone. But I've seen that through pretty much everything, is like with doing anything, you form habits, and habits become skills. So yeah, that's what that slide was about primarily.
I think we should take maybe a couple more, and then Emily.
I'm just curious, in lieu of repetition and coming to something with maybe an empty mind, or if you have like a research process that informs, being able to turn your mind off and still have ideas flow, and what that process might look like for you.
So can you say that just one more time? So I definitely heard the research part.
Yeah, so just curious, essentially, how much research you really pour into something, even, whether it's a font for Disney or a album cover, how deep you dive.
A lot. I'm a researcher, so like that's something like with record collecting and things like that, I just always had the collecting bug. And when you have the collecting bug, like when I was younger, it was baseball cards, and I would organize my baseball cards. I knew all the stats and things like that. I collect books, so like the librarian, also with record collecting, cataloging everything and categorizing everything. But I love research. I think research is so much fun. When like you mentioned, I think you said the Disney project. I bought a book about the history of Disney and read about it, and just try to find anything that I can to spring forward, like what are these things that I could find? They gave me probably 3 to 5 words that they wanted it to feel like. And so with those words, I'm able to use those words to find clues, ideas, things that kind of pull things out. Sometimes they're just dead ends, like when you design a typeface, it's a lot of nuance. And so it's a different process, but with a lot of other things, there's hard facts that you can point to and just say, hey, have you seen this? I designed a project for this company, and they're a zero knowledge company. And the most intelligent people I've ever met, like just bar none. And it was fun to just show them research and things. They just lost their minds. They loved it. And so it's like finding those commonalities and things that that you have a common bond on, and then building from there. But research really does give you a lot of those things. And without research, it makes it really difficult.
I'm just curious, when you were saying you were showing them your research, is that part of, you were speaking to earlier, wanting to document your process?
Yeah.
Is your research part of that, just how you document that research?
It is definitely. It gets put aside, sadly, and I think that's something that I want to bring forth. I think that's something that I really feel like there's energy around that, like just to show a full project from beginning to end. It is harder to show a project like that, you know, like how do you do that? But when we were doing that, I came up with an idea, that specific project of like just starting a database of like different artists, designers, color, light, how light works, things like that, just to start a database so that you can constantly pull from it and always have it. So it's thinking about things like that you can actually recycle and reuse sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's valuable. But yeah, I think showing the process in that way, I don't know how it applies to the final project and how you can how it can be demonstrated to people besides like a case study. But I think to me, showing the process is way more interesting than the final work, because that's where sadly things get left behind that were really interesting. With that specific client, they had an idea in mind that they really wanted, and I kind of knew that, but I tried to, Trojan horse other ideas in there and try and get around some of that. But those ideas are still there and great, and I wanted to show some of that stuff tonight, but I just didn't have enough time. But some of that stuff is really exciting. But then you spend another month building that stuff out and explaining it more. So if you can work it into your process, I think it will be educational for you at least. But with the album cover work, I think it's fun because I can at least show it's not just all data and writing, I mean, a lot of the stuff would just be like pages of reading materials, and I don't know who wants to sift through that stuff.
I think
Thank you.
we can take one more if someone has a burning final question.
Yeah, hi. So I think it's really impressive the amount of styles you've mastered. And would you say that you are more a paper and pen person or a digital creator? And what are your favorite programs that you're using? What are your favorite mediums to create these styles?
I'm both. I mean, I start with paper and pen, but I also sketch in digital. I mean, I go back between them. I've really liked Figma, sans tonight. Yeah. I think it's an amazing program, but I think like really what's interesting to me now are building my own programs and starting to, I think the future designers are going to be making their own apps. I have friends that have developed out applications that are almost as good as Illustrator by just vibe coding things. And so I see the future being designers building bespoke applications for a client. And so I do think that the design practice is going to be a lot more robust than aesthetics, way more than just aesthetics.
We invite you, well, thank you everyone for being here tonight, but we invite you to join us in the lobby for a drink. We'll all be circulating and really look forward to chatting with all of you. On behalf of the Walker, I just really want to thank you all for being here tonight. Give Mike one last round of applause. Thanks so much.